The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Yes, it's true. We're really back. It's the end of the vacation. The vacation has ended and we are back on the David Pakman Show. This was a long vacation. I don't know who it was longer for. Was it longest for me? Was it longest for Pat? We'll hear about his vacation escapades tomorrow, and I know a lot of people are very, very curious to hear about how did it go with Soylent and how did the road trip go and the entire thing. But we're not, Pat, I know you're eager to talk about it.
I'm still mentally drained from this whole experience, and you're going to learn a lot more about it tomorrow.
Yeah. Just I've only heard about probably 5% of Pat's vacation story. And most of it is completely unbelievable.
It was an adventure. I mean, there were good points, there were bad points, a lot of bad points, but
yeah,
that's the experience, I guess.
It's you. If nothing else, you built character. You built character on this trip.
A lot of character.
And you know the good. And I'll get into my trip in a second here, but I was pleased that since we previewed this vacation for about 3 to 4 weeks, I didn't get that many people wondering if the show had been pulled off the air. And every time we go on break, I start getting emails and tweets from people saying, has the David Pakman Show ended? And of course, if the David Pakman Show were to end in that way and go off the air on a particular day, we would have weeks, if not months, if not years of me previewing that. So of course we wouldn't just go off the air, but still I started getting emails from people saying, I'm wondering why there haven't been any shows and this type of thing. And I explained, oh, we're just on vacation, that's all. But we are back. I did go to visit my family in South America, in my birth country of Argentina. I spent most of the time in the capital city of Buenos Aires, seeing family and friends, and this just doing that type of thing. I did take a 3-night, 4-day side trip to the wine country of Mendoza, which was fascinating. I have never really traveled inside of Argentina because every time I've gone back since my family left Argentina, it's to visit family, so I don't really ever have time. And this time I made it a point. We had a little more time because of the way the vacation dates worked out, and my girlfriend and I went to Mendoza. It was very interesting, completely different in every way. I mean, everything from the accent that people speak Spanish with to the way of life and every aspect of it just very different. And Argentina is a very big country. It stands to reason that much like in the U.S., where you've got the Northeast and you've got the Deep South and the West Coast and the Midwest and these regions that are so different. In a country like Argentina that goes more north to south than east-west, you've got desert at the north that it's warm basically year-round, all the way down to effectively Antarctica, which is cold almost completely year-round. You're going to get some different stuff. And indeed there was, and Mendoza was very interesting as well.
And in the preview for the vacation, didn't you mention that you were going to go on some excursion in Mendoza? Maybe you're going to climb a mountain or something, and it would be a side trip within a side trip within a trip, some Inception type thing?
It was Inception, or sort of like those Russian dolls, the Russian dolls. Yeah, I did. It wasn't so much a side trip within a side trip, but part of being in Mendoza was instead of going on these, you know how you can do these full-day tourist excursions where it's basically like a limited security incarceration where they control your entire day. You're expected to be out front of wherever you're staying at 7 a.m. and you'll be back only when they decide you'll be back, and you'll spend the amount of time they say at different, usually overly commercialized places.
You go on a bus, you got to get back on the bus, otherwise
that's exactly right.
I did one.
We decided not to do that. What we did is rent a car, which I would not dare drive in Buenos Aires, but in Mendoza, it was much more calm, the driving there. The highways were also pretty good. Rent a car, little tiny stick shift Chevy Corsa or something like that is what we had. And to drive up a little bit into the mountains, and of course the Andes can get very, very high. I don't think we got higher than 4,000 feet at any point during this thing. And just kind of do our own thing. Visit some small towns, go to some of the less commercialized vineyards, and sample some of the local wine, et cetera, et cetera. Mostly vegan wine, I will mention. It would have been okay for you, Pat.
Sounds like Argentina's heartland.
It sort of is. Yeah, it sort of was like the heartland of Argentina, and just endlessly fascinating. As you get closer and closer to the Andes Mountains, it's mostly trucks that have come over the mountain, supply trucks, cargo trucks of different kinds.
They can drive on those roads?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm imagining like these curvy roads around the sides of cliffs without guardrails.
They're curvy, but they're not precarious roads. They're good highways. I mean, yeah, at some points there aren't necessarily guardrails, but it's not these super narrow dirt roads or anything like that. So that was a really great trip. On the way back to the airport to fly back to the city, our taxi was rear-ended by a bicyclist. And there's this really interesting driving thing that happens in Argentina, and I've talked about this a little bit. The driving is mostly bonkers. I mean, just insane driving. Not the types of stuff I've seen in videos in parts of Asia, including India, China, etc. Not that nuts, but pretty damn crazy. Like I drove in Naples, Italy, which was utterly insane. And I think driving in Buenos Aires is pretty similar to Naples, Italy level, so I wouldn't want to drive there. But one notable thing is here in the US, if you're heading towards a green light and it turns yellow, you'll go through. For the most part, you go through. And even sometimes if it turns red and you know that it's a situation where the oncoming, the perpendicular traffic doesn't immediately get a green, it's not that rare that people will blow a red light, even here in Boston, right? Because
you have a few extra seconds.
You know that there's a bit of a delay. In Argentina, for two reasons. One, that the street lights, the traffic lights, they don't go red to green. They go red, and while the red light is on, the yellow one comes on, which is kind of like, we're about to go to green. And then it goes to green. And in addition to that, people start rolling forward when the perpendicular traffic gets a yellow light. So one thing people do is when there's a yellow light, you stop. People do not blow red lights in Argentina because you know that the oncoming traffic, or rather the perpendicular traffic, gets moving so early. So our cab driver was coming up on a traffic light, and it turned yellow, and he slammed on his brakes because that's what you do in Argentina because you don't want to get hit by the perpendicular traffic.
Sounds quite dangerous.
And
there's no process of transition then if you slam on your brakes when it's yellow.
There's like no transition at all. Yeah. And also we were kind of blocked by a bus, a city bus. So especially he couldn't see whether somebody was going to be coming on. So he slammed on his brakes. And out of the corner of my eye, in my periphery, I see something fly. And I assume, oh, these are like rickety old taxis. The trunk popped open, and that's my luggage that just flew out. But no, it wasn't. It was a bicyclist. The cyclist had hit the back of the car, and he flew off.
And that's what you saw flying?
That's what I saw in my periphery. And the bus driver of the bus park that was driving next to us and the cab driver both got out and asked the guy if he was okay. He got right up, and he seemed okay, but he seemed to be sort of in a state of shock. But he insisted he didn't want the police called or an ambulance, and he kind of gingerly walked his bike over to the curb. It was insane.
Could you feel the car being hit? Because it's not like obviously a car is hitting your car where you can get the sensation.
You felt it.
You felt it.
Oh, yeah.
But you may have just thought that it was because of the sudden stop, right?
I wasn't sure. I didn't know if it was just that the trunk popped open and it was just the trunk's going open real quick that made the car shake, or if maybe we had been bumped by another car. But then I looked behind, and of course the guy's bike had already fallen. Wow. So there was nothing behind us.
Did he tumble?
He didn't so much tumble. No.
Just
it wasn't
Superman
cartoonish
style.
In the way that you're imagining. No, he just kind of was down, and it was really scary. And our cab driver was shaken up. He was visibly shaken, and he said, I try to be so careful. I felt bad for the guy, actually, because he seemed really, really shaken up about it. And he did what you're expected to do there, which is, if you're not completely sure that there are no cars about to get a green light themselves, or a red plus a yellow, you stop. He did what is expected there, and this guy was just riding very close behind him, didn't have a helmet on, which of course legally he should have had, but not that it really matters. And it was not a great situation.
Perhaps the most dangerous thing is that guy's lying down in the middle of the road when all the cars are about to start going. Then.
Yeah, right. Well, no, we had just gotten. He was in the road the way people had just gotten the red. Mm-hmm. So that was he wasn't in particular danger there. But with the bus driver getting out, nobody was going to move. But it was pretty bad. And then on the flight from Mendoza back to the city, also experienced some of the worst turbulence I've ever experienced on a flight, where everybody on the plane, as you have a big drop, goes. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of those, but it was, and I've flown a fair amount, and it was pretty bad. I was uncomfortable.
But you managed to stay conscious for the entire flight?
I did. I stayed conscious for all 6 individual takeoff and landings that I had. 2 flights down there, 2 flights back, and then 1 flight in each direction on the side trip.
Wow.
I did remain conscious. Although, and this, I wasn't even going to get into this, but we've got a few minutes, so I will tell this story. As people might remember, about a year ago, actually, when we had last summer's vacation was late. It was kind of in September. And it was very early on in producer Pat Ford's tenure, in fact.
I don't even think I made my appearance on the show.
Maybe not.
Before that vacation.
That's right. You had been working in a behind the scenes capacity, and he immediately Pat thought his work was going so well that only a week in he was getting a week and a half vacation, but it was actually pre-scheduled. Yeah. So I fainted on a flight back from vacation last year, and it was about an 8-hour flight. And I determined with a team of doctors that I basically have a tendency towards hypotension or low blood pressure. And on the plane, it was triggered by a few things. One being that being on a plane is sort of like being at around 4,000 to 5,000 feet based on the way that the airplane is pressurized. It's like being kind of like in Denver, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's not, you're not going to get significant altitude sickness, but you will sort of feel that you're not at sea level, combined with having a glass of wine or two on the plane because, hey, international flight, free wine, why not? Which further dilates the blood vessels, etc. And having had coffee before the flight, which is a stimulant combined with a depressant, all of this together with having a big meal on the plane caused my blood pressure to drop. And because I was not able to lie down because I was sitting in an economy airplane seat, I fainted on the plane. And it's probably the 6th or 7th time I fainted in my life. I sort of have had this tendency at different points in my life. So I took all the right precautions on the way down and back. No alcohol on the planes, no coffee on the planes, no huge meals, just sort of eat slowly, stand up regularly, stay hydrated, no problem at all. But on one of the days in Mendoza, we went to a wine, sort of like a wine tasting lunch. And at these lunches, they do serve you a lot of food. And they bring a different wine to sample with each course. And then, of course, like is common in many countries, everybody has a coffee after they've had finished their meal. And the combination of the elevation with the wine and the large meal and the coffee made me start feeling the way I did when I fainted that time on the plane. Okay. I recognized it pretty quickly, and I immediately, not lay down, but sort of like sat down in a couch and put my feet up. And this, I guess, weathered the low blood pressure that I was starting to have. And I didn't faint. I just kind of didn't feel well for about 15 or 20 minutes. And we were at 4,000 feet elevation. So what's interesting is it's the exact same type of thing. It was a reduced oxygen situation. I had had a meal. I had had a couple of glasses of wine, the depressant, then coffee. Similar thing. And I started feeling that exact same way. Now, fortunately, I recognized it, sat down, had a glass of water, and was okay. But had I been in a slightly different scenario and able to sit down or whatever, I might have fainted again.
Yeah, it seems like you've solved what the problem is, which is like the first step for preventing it from happening again.
I guess so.
Because I remember when you fainted on the plane last year, was it, that you had to wear a heart monitor for a certain amount of time? That would have been a much more significant issue. Yeah. This you can kind of avoid. I mean, you just don't have alcohol at high altitudes.
That's exactly
don't have
right.
Coffee.
So no doubt I will not be combining. And the instances where I would have coffee and alcohol are so few, right? Because for the most part, I don't really drink alcohol during the day. If I go out at night, I might have a drink or two with friends, but then I'm not going to have coffee afterwards because I'm going to want to go to bed.
But the wine thing with dinner and then the coffee after, that seems to make sense to
me.
But
I just don't have coffee at night. I skip the coffee after dinner.
Or if you're drinking Four Locos.
Yeah, if I have a half a dozen Four Locos, that would be the only other scenario, but I'm going to avoid that. And probably in the future, when I'm anywhere of a high elevation, with a high elevation, I just probably won't drink at all because it seems like those really are the triggers. But anyway, so that was the situation. People warned me that I would find Argentina to be very expensive because of the currency issue that they're having. It was way more expensive than last time, but of course we live in a pretty expensive part of the world, of the country here in Boston. So compared to Boston, things did not strike me as outrageous. But of course, in Argentinian salaries, the country is really expensive right now and has had a lot of inflation. But maybe we'll dig into that a little bit more later. So that's my vacation trip. Tomorrow, we will hear about Pat Ford's vacation trip. Is it fair to say, Pat, that your trip was way more eventful than mine without going into good, bad, or details?
It was probably more eventful, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that will be tomorrow. We are back. We've got a full week this week. And then next week, we will be on David Pakman Show Fall Vacation. And then that is going to run for 3 weeks, just as a preparation for that. No, I'm kidding. We're here. We're here for a while, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.